UFC 309 is going down on Saturday, November 16th. That'll happen at the world's most famous arena, aka Madison Square Garden. And there are some major matchups that UFC enthusiasts and sports bettors, they're going to be all over. So let's talk betting UFC 309. We're going to do it on this edition of Hitting the Books. And joining me for this one is one of the best voices when it comes to MMA betting. His name is Luca Fury, and also my guy, sports betting analyst for the New York Post. His name is Erich Richter. Both guys join me now. Luca, Eric, what's going on?
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, glad to have you both here. Eric, we do this quite often, so always good to see you again. And guys, I want to start with looking at the biggest fights of this night on this card, because this is a really stacked card. Jon Jones looking to defend his heavyweight title against former champ Stipe Miocic. Jones is a huge favorite at -700. If you like Miocic, who's one of the best heavyweights of all time, to pull off the upset, you can find him for odds around +500. So, Eric, I'm going to start with you on this one. Where are you seeing value in betting this legacy matchup, especially with Jones being such a huge favorite?
You know, Stipe's got a tough little matchup here against, arguably, not even arguably, honestly. Jon Jones, the best fighter of all time. He's moved up to heavyweight now. He's formerly a light heavyweight, light heavyweight. And, he's bulked up. Stipe hasn't fought in a long time. He's coming off of a knockout loss to Francis Ngannou. Stipe has really been getting by on really excellent fundamentals. He was the best heavyweight boxer probably of all time. But my issue with that is that it's not really saying a whole lot. Saying he's the best heavyweight boxer, it doesn't hold a lot of weight, because there's not a whole lot of elite heavyweight boxing in the UFC. It's really kind of heavyweight has been kind of a little, it hasn't been what it should be since basically Brock Lesnar was one of the fighters that was at heavyweight that was, like a legitimately great wrestler, and kept that division afloat. Stipe is ran through heavyweight. He's a legend. Jon probably shouldn't be fighting him after Stipe hasn't fought in 4 years. For me, I'm looking at betting Jon here. It's not really saying a whole lot. He's a -700 favorite. So for me, I'd be looking at Stipe to just put up a really good fight. He's had eye problems. He's older. He's not fast, which is a huge problem. Jon's going to have a really good speed advantage. The Post Scott Fontana interviewed Jon Jones yesterday, and he said that he weighs about 235. Jon's gonna be really light, and he's gonna be really fast, and I'm expecting Jon to win this by finish. I got Jon over 1.5 rounds. What say you, Luca?
Yeah, I think Jon Jones will go out there and get a finish here. I mean, if you look at the dynamics of the matchup when they were both in their primes, it significantly favors Jon Jones. But then on top of that, we have Jones, who finally made his move up to heavyweight. He is bulked up, as you mentioned. It's not huge or anything, but he is still a legitimate heavyweight size. Stipe is actually one of the smaller heavyweights himself, coming in somewhere between 230, 240 as well. So there's not going to be any kind of real size advantage for Stipe here. In terms of the youth advantage that is for Jones, he's not necessarily in his prime, but he's certainly much closer to it than Stipe is. Stipe's not fought in multiple years now. His last fight was a brutal knockout loss to Francis. So if you're looking at this matchup, there's absolutely no reason why it should be made at this point in time. It should be one-way traffic, basically a squash matchup. The only reason that they're trying to be able to angle for it is, well, Stipe has the most title defenses in UFC heavyweight history, so that makes him the UFC heavyweight GOAT. So even though he hasn't done anything in any recent times, somehow that makes him worthy of this fight. He's not. It's a total sham fight. Jon Jones should be able to absolutely walk through him. The question for me is, which way does he do it? Obviously, the money line is -700 right now. I'm not going to say there's value in that, even though I fully expect Jones to win. The question for me is, does he get the job done by knockout or sub? I think if you're looking at how he wants to end his career with a statement, it would be by knockout, especially with the comparisons to Francis Ngannou, where people talked about who would have won that fight if they had actually matched up. Well, Stipe got brutally knocked out by Francis, so if Jones wants to somehow make himself look as good or better than Francis, well, getting a knockout would be one way to do that. Also, Jones is a guy who doesn't usually get many knockouts in his career. With increased size and potentially power at heavyweight, maybe he wants to try to leverage that to try to, again, close the show with an impressive KO on his way out of the sport. Or the easier route would be submission. He does have Gordon Ryan in his camp, one of the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners of all time. That would indicate that he's actually going to look for the sub, which would probably be pretty easy for him as well. So for me, it's not so much about who wins the fight. It's about what way does it get done for Jon Jones. And I think if you're looking for value betting it, try to figure out if it's going to be by KO or sub, and then go for a prop on one of the two.
Yeah, it seems like that would be a good play. And Luca, I have to shout you out because I love that you just said, hey, this is a sham fight. You are not holding it. Like, the odds are what they are here. You're not respecting this fight. Why is this even going down? But I see what they were trying to sell here in some way. Good analysis, guys, on that one. Now, next up, we have a rematch between former UFC lightweight champ Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler. This, I think, I don't think you're going to call this a sham fight, Luca, because Chandler, he has promised a mind-blowing win. Now, Chandler, he's the underdog here. Line of plus 210. That's a bit tantalizing. Luca, I'm going to start with you first on this one. Are you backing Chandler to blow some minds with an upset, or do you like Oliveira to win where his odds are minus 260?
In terms of who I outright favor, who I think has at least a 51% chance to win the matchup, I do favor Charles Oliveira, but I can't get behind the line on him. If you look at their first fight, which wasn't that long ago, it was recent enough that they're both pretty much the same fighter since then. Charles Oliveira should have got finished there. He got knocked down, and then for the last couple of minutes of that round, Chandler, for no apparent reason, just totally lay and prayed in his guard and allowed him to recover. If Chandler had actually gone for the finish, made him stand up, Chandler finishes that fight in the first round there. He didn't, and then Charles was able to come back and rally and obviously get the finish on Chandler. So I think the dynamics of the matchup we saw very clearly in that first fight. Both of them are capable of hurting the other. Both of them are capable of finishing the other. In that instance, not really rushing to lay almost 3-1 on either fighter. So even though I do think that Charles should be the favorite, I guess in terms of a pure betting perspective, if I had to, gun to my head, take a side, it would be a dog or pass situation. But I think the better play to look at here is the under, based on, again, what I just mentioned. These are two fighters who are very aggressive. They're kind of kill or be killed, especially in the case of Oliveira. Pretty much all of his fights are finishes, a lot of times early as well. He's a bit of a glass cannon. He's a great dynamic finisher, but not great at surviving adversity himself. We have seen him rally some more in recent years, but that still means he's been getting hurt and getting rocked along the way. So he's a guy who pretty much gets hurt or rocked in every single fight, win or lose. Same thing goes for Chandler. Both of them are good dynamic finishers. So I think at some point early in the first couple of rounds, we do get a finish from one or the other. So curious to see what the unders are released at when they finally post those lines for those. But that's the way I'll be trending here, is not so much towards the money line side, but more towards the under in case whatever guy wins. I think they're both very fallible here.
Okay, so looking at the under, Eric, let me get your thoughts on that really quickly. Any bit or part of you that might want to rock with going with Chandler for the upset here?
I have like the weirdest betting angle with this one, and honestly, it comes down to who's going to be actually a walkout first and who's going to walk out second. Michael Chandler is an adrenaline dump every time he fights. He is always the guy who's sprinting at his opponent. He gets super fired up for the walkout. I want to know if Chandler's going to walk out first or second. If Chandler walks out first, he's going to adrenaline dump, come down, see Oliveira come out, and then we'll see what happens in that first minute. I'm interested to see. For me, he's an adrenaline dumper. Like I said, he's always throwing crazy overhand rights and lefts, and then he's also doing this weird thing where he does the overhand right into a takedown, and that's just a terrible idea against Charles Oliveira, is the best submission grappler of all time. So for me, I'm looking at Charles Oliveira wins in under 1.5 rounds. I think it's going to be a finish. I don't see the whole Michael Chandler. I understand that Michael Chandler knocked him down. I talked to Charles Oliveira about it, and he said that he kind of, when it came to the striking, he wasn't impressed. And he definitely figured it out with that check left hook in the second round in their first fight. I'm going to take Charles Oliveira wins in under 1.5. I don't know what the odds are yet. I'm hoping to get minus 110. He's minus 260 favorite right now, but that's where I'm betting it. I think Charles Oliveira's got it. I think this is a terrible matchup for Chandler, and I don't know why he's taking this fight.
I'm disappointed in both of you. I thought somebody was going to say that Chandler was going to have a mind-blowing win. We do not get any of that in terms of a betting prediction from you guys. I'm not really disappointed. I'm just joking with you guys. Last thing before I get you guys out of here. We know this is an exciting card. Bettors are going to be looking for some good prop bets. They are not out yet, but what are you guys eyeing in terms of prop bets you might want to project or think that people should be keeping their eye on for either of these matchups when you look at it? Eric, I'll start with you first.
It should end up being the third to last fight on the main card. We're talking Bo Nickel and we're talking Paul Craig. So for everyone that doesn't know, Bo Nickel is probably the biggest prospect in MMA right now. He was national champion wrestler at Penn State. He also had a bunch of grappling matches that are super impressive. If you ever interested in a grappling match, I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. Watch Gordon Ryan versus Bo Nickel in a hybrid rules match. Crazy fight. Bo Nickel, he fought Cody Brundage. Not impressed. Paul Craig is, he's a veteran at middleweight. He moved down a weight. I'm actually pretty impressed with how he looks at that weight. I think that's the right weight class for him. Now, I don't think Paul Craig's is he's a great grappler. Key submission is triangle choke. I am not expecting a triangle choke. Bo Nickel barely even got subbed by Gordon Ryan in that choke, so I would not expect Paul Craig to land something like that on him. But actually, Paul Craig's just striking better than Bo Nickel. So again, the odds aren't out yet. I'm hoping to grab a Paul Craig by knockout at maybe 12-1, 10-1. That's my range right there. He's obviously a huge underdog. Bo Nickel's minus 1,000 favorite. Again, huge prospect, big time wrestler. But I'll be honest, I'm looking at Paul Craig by knockout at mega long shot odds. Sprinkle a little half unit there and watch this fight play out. It's gonna be real fun.
All right, that should be a good one for the fans to look at too. What about you, Luca? What prop are you keeping an eye on so when the odds come out, that you'd be willing to jump on?
Well, like I mentioned with the Jones fight, the potential finish props for him there, either KO or sub. If you bet generic inside the distance there, it's still probably going to be like -5 or 600 or something. So look specifically at KO or sub there based on what the lines are. Like I said, the under in the co-main event. And then as for this Paul Craig fight, I actually am somewhat in agreement with Erich here. I actually think that Bo Nickel is a fantastic prospect. A lot of the times the UFC does not pick actually the best prospects to give their full hype job to. And I think in this case, they actually picked right. I think not only is he a good athlete, of course, but he's also very smart and making significant improvements. Yes, he did get tapped, as Erich mentioned, against Gordon Ryan, but that was a while ago. You could see he's already improved since then based on some of his grappling and MMA fights. He made some very basic rookie mistakes against Gordon there and still was able actually to hold his own just his wrestling and athleticism. The thing here with Paul Craig is he's gotten some big upsets before. He has multiple elite wins with some sort of fluky submissions. That's not out of the question here, nor is a knockout. Bo Nickel, we have not seen his chin tested. We don't know what happens when he gets hit. Like Brock Lesnar, for example, had actually an iron chin. He just didn't like getting hit. Every time he got quote unquote knocked down, it was him getting hit and then basically just choosing to kind of turtle up. We don't know if Bo Nickel's like that. We don't know if he has actually an iron chin and can just walk through the fire. There's a ton of question marks. There's no way in hell I'm ever laying -1,000 on a guy like that. And then on top of that, let's say the striking isn't going well and he has to go for the takedowns. That's Paul Craig's world. That's where he's actually best at winning the fight. It's with a submission off of his back. So I think that actually is potentially one where, yes, I expect Bo Nickel to win. They made the matchup for a reason. But if you're looking at a guy who has the sort of weird kind of intangible skills that could get some sort of odd upset, Paul Craig is absolutely that guy. He has done it multiple times before. And even though I do on paper expect him to lose, I would not actually fully count out his chances in this one.
All right, another one to keep your eye on there in terms of the fight. Should be a good card, UFC 309 in NYC at Madison Square Garden on November 16th. That is Erich Richter, sports betting analyst for the New York Post, and MMA betting guru Luca Fury joining me here on Hitting the Books. Guys, appreciate the time. Thanks for joining me, and we'll do this again soon.
Thank you so much.
Dex, appreciate you, buddy.
Anytime.